Hello, good morning, and welcome to this networking session about Sistema Europe. And I will immediately pass the word to Marshall Marcus, who will lead you through much of the first part of this.
Etienne, thank you very much. Apparently the microphone is because we're being recorded, not because you will otherwise not be able to hear us. So we were going to talk a little bit about how the Sistema movement is working in Europe, and also to ask you, how useful, what could you see Sistema as an idea being used for? All the slides we show are available at this address, which is down at the bottom of the screen. So if you don't feel like doing too much writing, then you just need to know this is my blog, and then it's /classical next. So the first question we just wanted to spend a few minutes on was, what is El Sistema? And I wanted to ask people here, how many people here would say you know a very large amount what actually happens in Venezuela's El Sistema? One or two, okay. So we're going to spend, in that case, the first few slides are good, because the first few slides are going to be just talking a little bit about what El Sistema is. The bad news is there are a lot of slides. The good news is we'll go through them very quickly. I tried to isolate 3 or 4 things I think are really important. It is a program aiming for social development using music. It's open to everybody from a very early age. It's focused on regularly and immersively playing together, which for many Venezuelans means 24 hours a week. Often they're in their nucleo, their music nucleo, 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's kind of the base figure. And it uses local community music centers and networks of centers to work together. It's about very many other things. I'll just give you 10 very quick facts. It was founded in 1975 by Maestro Jose Antonio Abreu. Here he is getting one of his many awards. He seems to get an award every few months. This is him, by the way, a very unusual photograph in the late 70s when I first met him in working in Venezuela when the Sistema was then about 4 or 5 years old. It began with 11 people. So if you have a project with only a few people, don't worry. He started with 11 people. It's been, however, supported by every Venezuelan government since 1975, and there are now around 400,000 young people in Venezuela, which has a population of about 30 million. And they've just announced a plan to work in the schools to boost this to 1 million young people by 2020. So then you're getting to a point where it has real scale. It's, it will be 10, 15, 20, 30% of the young people in the country. More than 2 million Venezuelans have been through since 1975. Just to give you an idea of the scale, in every state in Venezuela, there's a nucleo, a local music center. So there are almost 300 music centers in the country. There are almost 400 youth orchestras, almost 350 choirs. As it has rolled out in the last decade throughout the world, there are now more than 100 Sistemas in more than 60 countries in 5 continents. Every time I do a talk in El Sistema, those figures need changing. That's probably out of date as we speak now. Interestingly, Venezuela does not run a single Sistema outside of Venezuela. They have offered the model for people to take, which means there are very, very many different types of Sistemas forming around the globe. And at the moment, there is an estimate there are around 1 million young people in Sistemas worldwide. Here just gives you an idea of some of the range of projects that happen within Sistema in Venezuela. One of the slides is of a prison orchestra. Another one is with the white gloves, is a hard of hearing choir, the White Hands Choir, which I think will be in Salzburg this summer, actually. There are some other groups of who are people who are working on all sorts of different projects. There's a Baroque group at the middle of the bottom there. There are so many different ways of working. Here, for example, are images of a luthier. Because they have so many instruments to make, they discovered they needed people to do all sorts of industries around that. Publishing music, making instruments, looking after them. This is a center in Caracas, which is focused merely on repairing and making instruments. And here is some of the places within the world which is spread in the last few years. In Africa, in Japan, in the States, in the UK, in 15 or 16 countries in the UK, all of them around there. I mean, it's now, as I say, in every continent in the world, in different places. But however, what is it really about? I've got 20 very quick slides here, which show you the values and methodology of the way it works. The first thing is, it's about, as I said, it's about social change. This does not start as a music education project. It begins as a social project for us to develop ourselves and people within our society. However, the thing which people often forget is that it's aimed at doing this by working at musical excellence. And everything about El Sistema, whatever it is you do, if you photocopy the music, if you play in the Concerthaus in the Simon Bolivar Symphony Orchestra, it's about musical excellence. This is an image of South Africa of a group called Buscade, which is not a Sistema project, but which very much follows the precepts of El Sistema. It's about accessibility. When you begin a project, it is open, free, to every single person in the local area which it begins. There are no auditions to start off with. Auditions do come later, but it is about that variety. Special needs is a very important area. This is the White Hands Chorus I referred to before, and in Venezuela there are many places which specialize in people with special needs, with the idea that culture, that music is for everybody to practice, wherever you come and what you come with. Start young. This is a group in Barquisimeto, the city that Gustavo Dudamel comes from, of an orchestra just beginning to sit down. This orchestra is between the age of 3 and 5-year-olds. And it's an incomplete orchestra. There are strings, there are woodwind, there are brass. They start really young. And I think that's one of the most important precepts to go on with. There is a commitment to innovation and learning. It's a project which changes a lot. It's actually not a system. A system implies fixed. It's a developing one. Here is a picture of a father and son in the United States working on something called the paper orchestra, which began as a way of providing instruments where there were not enough instruments. They made their own instruments, literally. But it turned into something where they realized it was a fantastic bonding project for how families work together with children as they come into the project. Lack of fear of failure is, I think, one of the most important things in Europe that we can learn. If any of you grew up as musicians like me, the most important lesson you learned at the beginning was, don't get it wrong. And in Venezuela, they have this wonderful thing. They don't mind about getting things wrong, because they see that as just another way of getting things right as you go on. This is a picture of a young boy of 11 who's using my Baroque bow in a project he's in the middle of Caracas in a nucleo, and I just said, look, here's a rather weird bow. You're playing Vivaldi. Try this. If I do that in Europe, you're afraid you will not know how to use this rather unusual thing. Yeah, let me try this. That's what he said, and he tried it. No fear of failure. Joy is a hugely, hugely important thing. Everything is approached with this wonderful Latin, vibrant spirit that let's have fun. Yeah, you're learning an instrument well. This is actually a paper orchestra made of wood and paper and things which they've created in Hawaii in the nucleo. And I just use it because it expresses to me the color and the fun and the joy which is behind a lot of that. Like our weather here, we can get a little bit gray at the way we make our music with young people. Now, everything in Venezuela works around what is called the nucleo. This is a nucleo just outside Caracas. That is Carmen, who runs the Guarenas nucleo. And the nucleo is like, if you like, it's a kind of music, social music center. It's where everything happens. And the important point is, it begins at a local level in the community. And often these are spaces which are used for nothing else, which means when you start your Sistema project, you make the atmosphere, you make the culture, you make the ambience that you want. You don't have to take the culture of the school or the concert hall that you work in. And as you see, they've decorated in a way that suggests what they think it should be like. Their teachers are an extraordinary bunch of people. This is Stan Thompson, who runs the Philadelphia Play on Philly project, who's a musician himself. Many of the teachers are musicians to begin with who run the projects, and there is a whole way of teaching which we could spend a little time on later. Peer teaching is very important. Maestro Abreu always says, if you can play 3 notes, you are a teacher to the person who only knows 2 notes. Here's a picture of a young boy showing a young girl how to hold the wooden, the new bow that she's trying. And it's a wonderful way of breaking down the barriers that we're so great at in Europe. Are you a teacher? Are you a learner? If you're in Venezuela and in Sistema, you are both. And that's something I think that we can learn from that. Ensemble learning is how this all works. It works by not learning your instrument, but by learning how to play together. So if you start from nothing, you may do a concert with an orchestra of other people who have not played instruments a month after the nucleo starts. Because you're not trying to show that you play the instrument well, you're trying to show that you know how to make music together. So it becomes a very, very powerful tool for the development culture of society. Frequency, I mentioned this already. This is a Sistema in Coro in Venezuela. These kids are in 6 days a week, 4 days. They finish school at 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, they're at the Nucleo. They probably don't leave till 8 o'clock in the evening. Every day of the week apart from Sunday. And apparently some of them asked to go other days as well. Performance is something which is hugely encouraged. Actually, this is interesting. This is the Simon Bolivar Orchestra performing, I think, in the Großes Festspielhaus in Salzburg. But you're encouraged immediately, as soon as you can play anything, play it, give a performance. Any person visiting a Nucleo becomes an excuse for the kids to perform. And in that way, they learn performance. They also get fantastic feedback immediately and this kind of positive learning. Community involvement is then also a hugely important thing. This is a project that grows from the bottom up. It's not a top-down project. It's not about concert halls or orchestras or governments giving money. It's about projects starting at local area and growing from that. Social cohesion, again, I'm going to run through the last few. Inspired leadership is at the center of what has made the Sistema in Venezuela work in different ways. Here's José Antonio Abreu, who began the Sistema. Just down the road from the concert I showed before, here's a wall painting of Gustavo Dudamel. Actually, it's interesting. He's been painted as Simon Bolivar, who is the Venezuelan national hero. If you know Venezuela, you immediately see he's been painted. He's one of the most well-known people in Venezuela of young people. He is another type of leader who's just emerged out of El Sistema, and he, if you like, is the kind of the artist leader. Here is Jesus Rodriguez, who is the guy who runs the Sistema in Mérida, in the mountains in Venezuela. And he's always smiling. Here he is with his 3 or 4 phones, his car keys, his plaques on the wall. He lives this thing every day, and he's a fantastic model for the people who are working it. And he is an example that leadership functions in the Sistema in many different layers of the organization. Here's another place that it functions, which this is London. This is London South Bank Centre, and this is the Lambeth in Harmony project. And the boy conducting, Simi, is a cellist who, after he'd been playing the cello for a very little amount of time with the new in Harmony project there, said, I'd like to try conducting. He is now becoming a new conductor. And there's something about the way Venezuelan Sistema people trust young people in the way that they work. So that's just an incredibly quick run. I'm sorry it's so quick, but I want to just get through some of the feeling of the kind of the joy, the hysteria, the love that infuses Sistema work in Venezuela. And now I'm going to ask Etienne to talk a little bit about what is Sistema Europe. Thanks.
Thank you. So Sistema Europe, here's, by the way, the web address, sistemaeurope.org. It's very rudimentary for the moment, but you get an idea and some links to some of the initiatives. Started in February last year, and then there was a big meeting in June with José Antonio Abreu, who approves of this idea of creating an umbrella in Europe for European Sistema initiatives and different countries' representations. These are the members right now, and these are including sistemas that are in planning in different countries. And sometimes there are different initiatives in one country. Sistema Europe is organized as a network organization and is very happy to just really include any initiative which adheres to the general values of it. There's no clearly fixed membership for the moment, and we think that's better. Here are 3 models of European sistemas that give a bit of an idea of how this can play out. It doesn't necessarily have to play out like this. It can give an idea of how it can play out and might give you some ideas how maybe you could access one or the other things in the future. The pure model, and we say pure because there's a mostly homogeneous demographic profile, as in Venezuela, would be a big noise in Scotland, Sistema Scotland. Here's, just as an example, a special program that they do, bringing an artist home for tea. So it's something that they've been doing for a while very successfully. They bring their artists back into the families on an afternoon in order to really engage the entire family, where sometimes there are members who never show up. They don't even come to the concert, so they actually go in there and create this family dynamic there. Scotland was a mentor sistema for the new sistemas which emerged later in Sweden and Denmark. So there's a bit of peer-to-peer there as well. Here's a government program that's in Harmony in England, which I find very interesting here. You see on the bottom that In Harmony is being delivered by a variety of institutions. And those can be opera houses, can be performing arts centers, can be orchestras, or can be community art centers, music schools. And it shows a little bit on how various institutions and institutions of different kinds can be included in this. Then there's Sistema England, which is an umbrella, and it includes non-government program initiatives as well, so not only these In Harmony programs. And Marshall, as you are really in the center of this, maybe you have one or two things to add?
Well, I'm a trustee of the In Harmony Sistema England project, and I think the interesting thing about the UK's or England's Sistemas is that it's very broad and it's very varied. As you can see, there are different kind of projects which lead and are partners, but also Sistema England has formed as a kind of umbrella to invite in all sorts of other projects. So apart from the 6 main In Harmony projects, we have projects in Norwich. There's another project in London called The Bridge, and there are various projects in which they may not be the most pure form, but we're there as a kind of network organization to help with information. I think one of the biggest things about El Sistema and the way it spreads well is internationally it spreads as a network. So you just get plugged in. I was in Iceland a week ago, and somebody said, oh, we want to start a Sistema. I did a couple of sessions with them. And what I can understand is they just need to find out around the world what's going on. So it's a very generous project as it travels internationally in that way, I would say.
Here's a third model, and that's Superar, which is based and originates from Vienna as a collaboration of Konzerthaus Wien, the Wiener Sängerknaben, and Caritas Wien. So naturally, with the Wiener Sängerknaben having an important role, there's a special focus on voice. And we call it the zonal model because it's present in different zones, and also maybe the franchise model because it actively offers to different countries and to different regions to help build Sistemas there. So it's beyond national borders. I myself am from Superar Switzerland, so we had a lot of contact, we got a lot of know-how from Superar Vienna, and we're in very close contact in organizing projects, exchanges, and we have here also someone from Superar Vienna. And yeah, we're very happy about that. So if you have any questions about this approach, please do not hesitate to contact us. Especially Superar is present in Eastern Europe. This is a main focus. And here we have a little clip. The general focus, while there's a lot of voice and singing going on, but the general focus is orchestra. And yeah, exactly. This is in Turkey, helped by members of Systema Guatemala, which originated 6 years ago with the help of the Venezuelans in Guatemala. So this is Bruno Campo, who's the founder of Systema Guatemala and one of the people that he works with. We at the moment in Switzerland, we just started our first orchestra. Same in Vienna. So we're very young. We have two young men of 19 and 21 who help us build this, and we're extremely happy with the kind of work that they do. This is after. gives you a little bit of an impression of the kind of spirit and also of the kind of enthusiasm that goes in there. Yes, so many of these children have started playing their instruments 4 months or even less ago. They are now working 4 hours a day, and I think it's like learning a language. I mean, if you spend so much time with it, you just simply learn faster. Yeah, it's part of the learning process. We find now with starting the orchestra in Switzerland that at a certain point after learning things by memory, they're like, "Ooh, this is really long to memorize. Now I don't remember the section before." I'm like, you know, there's this thing called the score, and it really helps. And then there's okay. So it has a different energy in that also. Yes, I would.
Yeah, I mean, in Venezuela, they often start with their own folk music to begin with. So you start with what you know, you start singing, you start playing the local folk instruments. And there are orchestras there who play Tchaikovsky symphonies from memory, of kids of 14, 15, 16 years old. So, I mean, most of the time they're using music, but they often, I mean, they will learn a lot by playing around, again and again. Rote is actually an important thing for them. And one of the things there is that many of them can play whole pieces from memory.
Right. So as we saw before, we just spent very little time here. Programs are running through orchestras, not only in England, but also Stockholm, through conservatories like in Lisbon, through choirs, of course, here with the Wiener Sängerknaben. And the key we just discussed before, we think for new Sistema initiatives is successful partnership building with local stakeholders, with institutions. Just briefly, these are you will have this this presentation afterwards to download financial models, the usual suspects. Just a quick word on sponsorship. Super Vienna is particularly strong here, which has reasons in the way things are being financed here. So this is really locally different. You get sponsors, you get companies who sponsor a school. And it's their school, and they come and play at their events, and they send corporate volunteers to help there. So there's a possibility to build very strong partnerships also on this level. These are certain projects that, or the next projects that we're doing with Sistema Europe. There's a big choir concert, Super R choir concert together with Sistema Europe on July 27. In Salzburg, because the Salzburger Festspiele have a big El Sistema roadshow, we would say, where they bring in 5 orchestras, 5 ensembles from Venezuela, some of them who've never been outside of Venezuela. Among them, the Orquesta Infantil de Venezuela, which are children between 8 and 13, 14 years old. They play this summer Mahler 1 with Simon Rattle in the Salzburger Festspiele. And we have the opportunity on August 7 to have a big meeting with that orchestra and playing a few pieces together. And that includes the children who just started a few months ago playing. So it'll be a rather big thing. There's an orchestra camp before that, a very intense seminario, which is always an important thing that works well. Maybe you can say 1 or 2 things about this.
New slide. So one of the next things that Sistema Europe will be involved in is on the 28th of June for the weekend, South Bank Centre in London, the Royal Festival Hall, which has done a lot of Sistema work over the years, is got a nuclear weekend in which they're bringing hundreds and hundreds of kids from around the UK to play. And from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock on the 28th, I'll be taking a talk with some specialists on the question of how do you adapt this very Latin model successfully in Europe. So that's there.
Yes, this is you can find this on the presentation to download. This document about core values and the principles.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no other pressing questions, thank you very much. I hope that was a little bit of help for you.